You have questions, we have answers. This is Jane Miller.
And this is Ken Miller. Welcome to our show, all about real estate with Ken and Jane. Well, Jane, a lot of homeowners in New Jersey still have septic systems. They're still abundant. There's a lot of places. So we think it's very important that we do a show devoted to the maintenance and inspection issues that come up with septic systems.
Absolutely. And a lot of buyers afraid of septic. And, including myself, our house as a septic, in the beginning, I was really worried. I loved the house. I loved the location, the everything, but I was worried about the septic. And that was you, Ken. You said nothing to worry about it. And you explained to me.
Well, there's a couple of things with septic. You have to do good prevention, like with anything else you do. You got to take care of it. Otherwise, there could be problems. That's the way of life. And then there's inspection issues that can arise, which things go wrong, and if they're neglected. So we're not the experts on septic. So to break it all down, we have with us as our guest today Tyler Wilton of New Jersey Septic Inspections. Tyler, welcome so much to our show.
Thanks for having me.
You're quite welcome. So give us an overview of what your company does for septic systems.
What we do septic inspections mainly for real estate transactions. That's probably about 90% of our business. We will check septics for regular homeowners, but that's all we do is just septic inspections.
Right. So, and the benefit of just doing the inspections is, I think that the buyers and also certainly the sellers, if they're on the other end of the inspection, they can feel that you have sort of like a third party independent because you have no financial benefit in finding, flaws in the system or things that are not working properly, right? You're just doing strictly third-party, unbiased inspections.
Right. Yeah. So we don't do any repair work. So it allows us to remain unbiased. Nobody really has to worry about us. Yeah. Again, finding a financial motive to say that something is bad when it's potentially not.
Right. In the real estate transaction, Tyler, often we have three type of people. One is they want a one-stop for all. They want to have a provider and inspector and tell them what's wrong with it or nothing wrong with it and how much, like a pest control, for example. They like a septic too. They want you to come determine and then give a quote and possibly repair and replace. That's one portion of the client, right? On the other extreme is the other portion say, hey, it's a conflict of interest, right? How do I know? Just like the other day, I had to service my car, right? I mean, when the technician or the reception tell you your pad, brake pad need to be replaced, not immediately, but you better do it. And I know them so well, so I say, yeah, just do it, because I know they will never recommend something which is not needed. But on the other hand, some seller may think, there's a motive there. If you say, if these things didn't break today, but possibly, if you say, no, need to be replaced, this definitely have a financially motive of
Well,
it.
I think
so some seller will do have a
That's true, but there's also the fact that the sellers aren't educated. They might come back, they might rebut that by saying, well, the system is working properly. Every time I flush it, I don't have a backlog. But they may not realize that when you flush it, it goes in the tank, but the holding tank, there's a leak and it's not going to the leaching field or where it's supposed to go. So there could be problems going on under the ground that the homeowners aren't aware about. So that might be their typical response. So before we get into the inspection and the maintenance, let's give the listeners a concept of how a septic system works with this holding tank and then the leaching field.
Yeah, so on any system or a traditional septic system, you basically have three main parts. You have your septic tank, the conveyance portion of the system, which is just really where the water essentially conveys through, generally a pipe to what's called a distribution box, then distributes the water into your absorption area, which is just a general term for the area where the water drains in the ground, right? So traditional absorption area is a disposal bed or leaching field. Really what it is just a big bed of stone with perforated pipes that, run through it, and then the water drains through the stone, through the soil, where it gets disposed of. And essentially the job of the septic tank is to basically take all the waste from the house. It traps the solid waste by having what's called inlet and outlet baffles. Those two baffles allow settling of the solids to essentially remain in the tank. And then as water travels out of the tank into the absorption area where it again drains into the soil. But yeah, that's just the general function of a septic system.
Right, right. So during the inspections or over time, what can go wrong, or what type of issues do you see that could be, big ticket items with septic systems?
Yeah, so just like anything else, everything has a lifespan. And the main thing on septic systems, as far as the reason why they go bad, is because even though that tank, it's supposed to trap the solid waste and grease and everything inside the tank, no matter what, a little bit over time carries out. It continuously carries out over time. And as solid waste and grease from cooking, things like that carry out of the tank, it gets into, that disposal bed or leaching field. It ultimately clogs up the stone and the soil that the water is supposed to drain through. And then it generally just doesn't drain anymore. And then once that happens, there's really no fix for it other than to really replace the leach field.
Right. So prevention is a very important thing we're going to cover. But like what I do, we have a septic system, and when I do, I'm ever so careful that with the dishes, I'll literally take paper. I'll spend money on paper towels. I'll wipe them down so the dishes are almost completely dry before I put any dish liquid on. I don't do the typical. A lot of people probably take their grease and they just dump it down the drain, but I make it almost greaseless to the extent I even take a paper towel, put on the dish liquid, wipe the dishes, and then throw that in the garbage.
So you're the perfect septic owner.
I'd put the repair guys out of business probably. But no, really, I'm serious. I do that. That's one thing we're going to cover in the maintenance. But the less grease or no grease is the best.
And that's actually what we tell everybody. We say wash your dishes before you wash your dishes.
Before you wash your dishes,
exactly.
Yeah. You see, there's
good.
Ken and I, right? We're yin and yang, but too extreme. For me,
you're putting the grease down.
For me,
she doesn't do dishes. So.
No, my husband forbidden me to do because every time I do, he said, "Why you throw them in there?" So it's like yell at me. So a lot of time, right?
So now you have an excuse not to do the dishes. Good,
thank
perfect.
you. That's what I learned when I was young, right? When you don't want to do something, you just say you can't, you do know how.
Yeah,
you
she's
just
not skilled enough.
And then my mom and dad said, "Forget it, just do it." Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's such an important thing, right? For the listeners out there that have the septic, that they maintain that type of practice, avoid the grease.
Yeah, definitely very important for sure.
Yeah.
So what other things would be good maintenance things to do for the septic? They sell different tablets out there, and what's your take on?
Yeah, so the main things as far as maintaining your septic is really getting it pumped on a regular basis. On average you want to pump it every 2 to 3 years, depending on how many people are living in your home and the usage of it. The type and size of the system obviously would matter as well. Limit obviously what goes down the drain, like you said that you do, grease from food products, pans from dishes, all that stuff should be wiped in the garbage as much as possible. Nothing other than toilet paper really should be going down the toilet. Even with a public sewer, really, you don't even want to flush baby wipes, sanitary napkins or anything like that, feminine products, latex products, things like that shouldn't be going down the toilet. All systems actually since 2012 on, and so older systems generally don't have them, is a filter. So basically, you can have a filter installed to the tank or into the system as in general. And that filter will filter the water as the water goes out, leaves the tank, or prior to it getting to the field. And that reduces the solid waste that carries out that ultimately destroys the system. So really getting it pumped out, if you have a filter, maintain it regularly.
But then clean the filter, because when the filter gets clogged, then the system will stop working, right?
Yes, exactly. So something like that in general. If you read online, a lot of places say, clean that filter every 6 months, but we always suggest do it at least quarterly. It's very simple. It just gets lifted out and hosed off. You hire a company to help you out to do that or whatever.
We don't have filter, right?
I don't know.
Probably
Our system goes back to the 80s. Well, I'm the filter, so that's. Oh, really? I'm the filter. I make sure whatever goes down the drain is clean.
Oh, that's low maintenance. No
yeah. No, it's a lot of elbow grease. That's what it is, right? What about also with septics with the laundry? I'm very careful. I think with laundry detergent, you have to be careful not to use powder. Laundry detergent.
Yeah, so in general, one of the main things is bleach, right? So in the septic tank, there's bacteria that ultimately breaks down the solid waste of the tank. It's within the tank, and so when you use excessive bleach, it can kill the bacteria that aids that bacterial digestion. So in general, when you asked about tablets as far as maintenance, so like a company like Ridex or similar products, in general, if you ask 10 septic guys, 5 will say, no, you don't need this. And then 5 will say, yes, use it. And to be quite honest with you, I personally am one of the guys that say, no, you don't need that. But in general, in theory, what those are is enzymes that aid in bacterial digestion of the solids, right? So in theory, they can help. But as to the bleach, excessive bleach, cleaning products, that stuff should not be going down the toilet or the tubs. Like, for example, we always tell you, if you're mopping your floors with a 5-gallon bucket, don't dump that down the tub. Dump it in the bushes or something outside. So that way, you're not killing that bacteria that's necessary.
Right. Yeah.
My husband, once again, he's very good. He already used the soap to clean the dishes, so that already in the trash bin.
And we're very careful not to use bleach either. We don't really use bleach, very limited basis.
Yeah,
because we just have to, because I know it's so bad because it'll kill the bacteria.
Well, that's the thing, actually. Like, you can still use bleach, right? If you have white shirts, you want to keep them white. You don't want them. So still use bleach, but obviously just nothing in excess.
Moderation.
Nothing in excess.
Oh, it's my shirt show? No.
Oh, yeah. it's a little less white today. You didn't use bleach.
Yeah.
No. No, I'm just
somebody said you can't use soap bar. I mean, in the septic. I don't know if it's true.
I don't know
or
why,
not.
because of the soap, when you take it from the bar and you apply it to your skin, it's breaking it down.
They told me don't use soap bar.
I heard not to use solid powder detergent. That's harder to break down. That's why we always use liquid detergent.
Yeah, liquid detergent is definitely better. As
yeah.
far as the soap bar, I don't know about that. I've never heard that before.
Somebody told me, but I don't know. It's just no base or truly there's a base. I mean, I just never used soap bar after that.
Yeah, I think maybe some people have asked us, should I not use antibacterial soap? But no, I mean, listen, you got to clean yourself. You have to use these things. You have to live your life just like anything else. Just try to do the preventative maintenance. But as far as not using a certain type of soap, I think you'd be fine using a bar soap.
Thank you for that, because sometimes
so you can wash your face again.
Sometimes they have all these type of special soap, right? You going to travel, they sell you this special soap. Is really nice, smell nice. But I since we moved to this home 10 years ago, I have to give up that part. I can't, I don't want to take the risk, so I never use any soap anymore. So only the liquid. So now I know I could.
No, you're fine.
You waited. Now you can wash your face with whatever soap you want, right?
Okay.
Right. What about with laundry? I heard it's good not to do an excessive amount of laundry in, so you don't overtax the system. In other words, don't do 4 or 5 loads of laundry, concurrently or one after the other. So you could tax the processing of the tank and the whole flow of the system.
Yeah, definitely you don't ever want to overload the system, right? So even if you have a big family, we always say to try to limit the the amount of loads of laundry you do to maybe 2 a day. Try to not to do any more than that. Don't save everything for a Saturday. With the dishwasher and the laundry, try to do those kinds of things in off-peak times. If everybody's showering in the morning, try to do those midday if it's a possibility, or even if everybody's showering at night, try to do those at off-peak times for sure.
Makes sense. You don't want to overshock the system.
Yeah, just like people, you don't want people run and then have to carry weight, right?
Yeah.
You want them give them an
opportunity
break.
for the system to catch its breath.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. So Tyler, let's talk about the inspection issues. That's a very nerve-wracking thing for a lot of the agents, a lot of the sellers when they at the time
the
buyers too, because the septic could be a very big ticket item depending on if it needs to be replaced. So let's give us the details how you guys handle the inspection of the septic tank.
Yeah, so in general, kind of what I tell people when they call in is we're going out there to really mainly answer two main questions. Is the system functioning properly, and is it in good condition, right? So in order to do that, we're going to locate all the components of the system, the tank, the conveyance portion, and then the absorption area. So once we locate everything, we expose everything, whether by digging up access points to run a camera or specifically digging up the distribution box, and then we'll do a boring into the stone of the leach field, and that by doing that allows us to kind of determine the drainage, right? So once we have everything located, then exposed, we're going to run water through the system, generally from a bathtub for about 40 minutes or so, and essentially watch the system work. And really what we're looking at, is the condition of each portion of the system. Is the field draining correctly? Is there any bellies in the pipes as we run a camera through? Is there any clogging of any of the laterals or any root intrusion, things like that? And then once everything basically is squared away, as far as okay, let's say we go out there and the system is functioning fine, the absorption area is draining okay. Then the next step is to pump the tank, right? So by pumping the tank allows us to check it fully while it's empty. People generally don't understand too much is that the way the system operates is that the tank is always full. So like even though you guys pumped the tank, yesterday, well, in a week or two as you guys live there, it does fill back up and then it ultimately stays full. So initially when we do the inspection, we do want to see it at its normal operating level, right? More specifically, the water level always stays right where the pipe exits the tank. That is one of the things that we would end up looking at is that operating level. If it is any lower than that, prior to us getting, or when we get there, it's really an indication that the tank is leaking, right? So at that point, that would be something that would be considered unsatisfactory.
Interesting. So if the water level in the tank is not at the exit baffle, regardless, even if the tank is pumped, it should be close to that because it's filling.
It would actually indicate one of two things: either the tank was pumped prior to us getting there and it didn't yet fill back up, right? Or the tank is leaking. But if you told me, as the homeowner, that the last time you pumped it was 2 years ago and you guys are a family living there, then it's leaking.
Then the tank is leaking, and the water's not exiting through the conveyance pipe; it's exiting into the ground somewhere else, and that's going to So
I just get confused, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes because I represent most of the seller these days, when the buyer, sometimes agent make appointment, some would want to pump during the home inspection. Some don't.
No, prior. That's what the confusion
yeah.
is. That a lot of in the past, Jane represents a lot of sellers, and a lot of times they require or request that the seller have the tank pumped prior to the inspection, which is
yeah. So actually, that's wrong. So specifically, the inspection standards state the tank should not be pumped prior to. So whenever we do an inspection, we do not want it pumped prior to the inspection. Specifically, the standards state that the absorption area, the leach field, should be checked prior to pumping the tank. And essentially if it's pumped before we get there, like let's just say, if it's the morning of, it's probably not that difference of checking the absorption area. But the reason being is because if we go out there and the absorption area is no longer draining properly the leach field, we're actually not supposed to pump the tank. And the reason being is because it essentially doesn't allow for a proper second opinion inspection. So what I mentioned before is that the tank operates full. So let's just say we go out there and we find some drainage issues with the leach field. Essentially, by pumping the tank, it empties the tank. And now you guys, as the family that's living there, you guys don't fill up the tank for another week and a half or so. Well, now, because the tank operates full, the field didn't receive water for about 2 weeks.
So it has a chance to deal with it.
Chance to a little bit go down. So essentially what then happens is, well, now you don't agree with what I said. So you get your own guy to go out there and he essentially sees it in a slightly different manner, right? So that's actually the reason why the tank shouldn't be pumped prior to, but also we want to see the operating level. So sometimes if there is a little bit of corrosion that you wouldn't possibly maybe see, even while the tank is empty, you would generally notice it by it leaking anyway. But yes, it doesn't allow for a proper second opinion inspection if the field is no longer draining properly.
Yeah. Right. So if you can't pump, you shouldn't pump prior. So how about you guys going to do the inspection and then pump it?
Yeah, so we kind of, the way we go about it is we'll either bring a pump truck there and the tank should be pumped while we're there after our initial kind of findings, or just at some point after, right? So it's just essentially pumping the tank is just an inspection of the tank itself. So we basically have everything already else figured out. And the tank appears to be in good shape because it's not lower than where it should be. We can check the baffles without pumping it, but obviously to get the best look is to look at it while it's empty. So even if we did it a day or two later, it's still essentially the same thing. It's not it doesn't change.
Yeah, I did had a few requests. The buyer said the seller should pay the pump because they're doing the inspection plus the pump. So now I understood.
Yeah.
Based on what you said, that's probably the correct
But your explanation makes a lot of sense. Yeah, don't pump the tank because then the leaching field has a chance to deal with it just by evaporation or just, it can deal with it. But if the tank is at the proper level, then it'll continue to get
we're seeing it under its normal usage.
Normal usage, right. That makes a lot of sense.
After that, you pump it out on the side so you can check the tank.
Check the tank while it's empty.
That's the whole thing, yeah. Now I understood better. Thank you. Thank you for explaining to me.
How do you guys assess the functionality of the leaching field in terms of whether it's absorbing the rate of absorption?
So the way the inspection standards are basically written in a sense is basically when we go out there we're gonna locate and expose the distribution box. 9 times out of 10, if it's not too deep or anything like that, we're gonna dig up the distribution box and we're gonna watch water flow into the box and then into those laterals go into the field,
which have perforations. They're like lateral. Yep. They're like piping.
Yep. There's holes at the bottom.
Holes in the bottom, so
exactly.
So water can go through them and then drain down
the stone. So in general, if you kind of can picture a cross section, you have about 18 inches of stone, roughly a 4-inch PVC pipe basically at the top, right? And as water flows through those perforated pipings, the pipes with holes in them, the water drains through the stone, drains through the soil. Now, when we check the field itself, one, we're checking the water flow into each lateral as the distribution box is open. But then also what we're doing is we're doing a boring into the field, one or multiple to kind of get the best look. But essentially what that is a hole that goes down to the top of the stone. And then we have basically a big shale bar that we create a void through the stone. And by doing that, basically we're looking through the stone and we're seeing if the stone is holding water. Holding water, now being wet is different than holding water. It could, the soil could be a little wet, but if it's holding water, that's what's kind of telling us how well or potentially not well it's draining. In theory, a good system, it's not holding water. As it does start to hold water, the water level rises, and essentially the higher that water is within the stone bed, that's basically the worse your system is. So the way the inspection standards are basically written is 6 inches of dry aggregate, meaning dry stone, below the invert of the lateral. So the bottoms of those pipings that's through the stone, 6 inches or more is considered satisfactory. Anything above that is technically considered a high water condition. Now that's kind of where it gets a little gray because in based on the inspection standards, lower within that 6 inches is considered a high water condition, recommending additional testing generally what's called a hydraulic load test. A hydraulic load test would then tell us if it can drain the designated volume of water that the amount of bedrooms that it has supposed to be able to drain. So, for example, if a high water condition is seen, we do a hydraulic load test on a 4-bedroom house. We're seeing if it can drain 650 gallons for the 4-bedroom house within a 24-hour period. And that ultimately tells us if it can drain the amount of water that a 4-bedroom house is supposed to be able to drain, essentially.
I see.
A lot of times on a high water condition, depending on the usage at the time of it being seen, it's a lot of times unlikely to pass that test, but sometimes it does.
Yeah. Do you think the rain gonna
Yeah, that was my question too. What if we had
3 days heavy rain and you come on the 4th day, and blue sky?
And what if you have sand soil conditions? So that means the rain is more likely to penetrate through the soil and get down to the location of the septic leaching
you have
field.
A clay.
Right. If you have clay, it could block it. But if you had let's say we had heavy rain in the last weekend, and then if you came out this last Monday, could that give you a false positive result on a high
on a high water condition
for the absorption area.
So generally, the way I've always explained this, obviously it can vary throughout the state a little bit depending on the soil types, but a rainfall doesn't necessarily make a good system bad, right? We're not going to see a perfectly good system look bad because of the rain, but what the rain does is it will exaggerate a bad system or a closely bad system, right? So if we did see a high water condition on when it just downpoured like this last weekend, I think we got a lot of rain. Yeah. So I mean, if we saw that directly after that, obviously we're going to take that into consideration. Maybe even just suggest, listen, we'll come back a week later and recheck it, or something along those lines. Yeah. But if it's a full saturation where it's completely outblown bad, we wouldn't suggest that the rain caused that. Yeah. I would suggest that it more so exaggerated.
Just exaggerated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so to the rain, we wouldn't suggest that it really causes a big issue on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick, we have about 2 minutes left. Can you talk about the code? When was the latest code changes and what for the septic? Is there any?
So specifically for our inspections, nothing has really changed in a very long time. But as far as the installs in general and how it affects the inspections, about 2012 is probably the most important time time a year when the code changed. And really two of the most important things was cesspools. Cesspools are essentially no longer allowed. I think everybody's mainly aware of that, whoever has, in the business. There are some parameters actually that the cesspools can be kept, but very minimal and far and few in between. And then the other thing was, which affects a lot of sales actually, is having an ejector pump in the basement, right? That was a code change in 2012, and it impacts the design of the system. But in general, like our inspections themselves, they're not necessarily for code compliance. So like when you have like installation companies, a lot of them do this, they will point to the code and say it's not to current code. Well, the only real people that can enforce a code issue is the health department that governs that specific septic system. So like if we did an inspect... I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that was fine. No, I'm just saying we're running out of time, so we'll have to have you come back. But could you please give your contact info?
So our company name is New Jersey Septic Inspections. Our phone number is 732-928-7300. Our website is njsepticinspect.com. Feel free to reach out, give us a call if you have any questions or concerns with your septic system. Be happy to help.
Yeah, very informative. Thank you so much, Tyler, for being our guest. We're out of time. We'll see everyone next week. Bye.
Thank you.